I would say that my coming out was framed in the feminist movement. I was very active in women's lib in the early 70s and had never really been that attracted to men, but hadn't thought about it that much. When I was in college, we had a women's theater group, the Milwaukee Women's Theater Collective. Thank you very much. None of us were out, and I was the one closest to coming out. And I remember conversations of, well, why don't we just do it, and then that part will be over with, and then we can move on. So it got to be a little problematic because I knew that I was a lesbian, but I didn't have a girlfriend or a partner or know how to make that leap into, doing the deed. And there was a woman in Milwaukee who will remain nameless, but she was something of a, I hate to make this reference, but Shane. And everybody had crushes on her, and she kind of took it upon herself to bring people out. Now, she had a girlfriend, and somehow she and the girlfriend had this worked out that she could sleep with other women. In the middle of our having sex, she had to stop and go talk to her girlfriend who was freaking out in the next room. It was horrible. So that was the actual physical coming out. Out to my parents happened years later. I had moved out of Milwaukee. I was living in Virginia. I was involved with a great community down there, and I just felt like, you know what, if they reject me, doesn't matter, because I have my own family that I created. And I remember telling my parents, there's something that I need to talk to you about. And my mother, who was not a housewife type, for some reason was baking that night. So I have this image of her, she's got this bowl and she's stirring, and I think it's the only time I ever saw her do something that domestic. But she's stirring, and I said, there's something I want to tell you. And then I just started crying. I'm gay. I was so mad at myself because I was not ashamed, and I wasn't disappointed to be telling them, but I was so nervous. And what happened was my mother just started stirring a little faster and leaned towards me. And my father looked down, he was sitting at the table. And then they go, we knew. Oh. I said, oh, okay, can I stay a few more days? and so that was that. First job as a television director was, I was 23 years old, and I got a job in Roanoke, Virginia. And I wrote to my friend Liz in Detroit, and I said, oh, wow, I can't find any women here. And she never got that letter. And being a really naive 23-year-old, I had written it on stationery with the logo of this television station that I was working at. And so when she didn't receive the letter, it got sent back to the station. And one of the secretaries opened it up and was just appalled. Now, I know that I didn't say anything lewd in there other than the fact that I can't find any women in Roanoke, but this got to be a big deal. And I found out about it years later because a lesbian friend of mine's mother worked at the station, and so her mother had warned her about me because I was some big dyke based on this letter that I can't find any women. And people started to really treat me a little differently and back off. So this would have been the late 70s now. And it was funny because we went on to have a really vibrant community in Roanoke. And I didn't lose my job. I didn't, so there was that time. Then I moved to a different station, also in Roanoke. We were all really close. I worked there for a long time, and there's a whole social scene, but I'm not coming out. I'm not telling my coworkers that I'm a lesbian. There's no reason. I had a totally separate life, and then I had my work life. But one of the news photographers he decided that he'd had enough, and there was a party, and he was trashed, and he came up to me and he said, everybody knows you're a lesbian. Why don't you just admit it? And he accused me of having a particular person as my girlfriend, and it was one of my best friends, but we weren't partners. And I just kind of let it alone because there was so much alcohol at this party and I didn't want to get into it. Well, that Monday morning, my boss calls me into the office and he said, you know, what? I could talk to the news photographer about this, but I thought I would just bring you in here. You know, what's going on? What happened? And so I told him what had happened. And then he said, well, why don't you just talk to him? He's your friend. Why don't you just talk to him? And I said, Jim, unless I look him in the eye and say, Lawrence, I am a lesbian, he is not going to be satisfied. And my boss just stepped back because that's when he realized, oh my God, this is true. Oh, well, and he he tried to be cool about it and liberal and all this, and he was like, well, you know, if you're a homosexual, that's fine with me. And he couldn't say the word homosexual. Homosexual. It was all very funny. But again, I didn't lose my job, so sort of the worst possible thing that could happen to me, which would be that I would lose my job because my career was very important to me. Everything unfurled and I didn't lose my job, and here I am, you know, 25, 30 years later, still in the business. I would just encourage people to be out, to be proud, to have conversations with straight people who are interested, because that's the only way that we're going to gain equal rights, if you will, when people realize that they do know gays and lesbians. I remember when I came out to my brother-in-law, he was like, you're the first gay person I ever met. And I said, no, Tom, I'm the first person that you know is gay. I'm sure you know tons of gay people. I mean, we're everywhere. Until you put a face on it and a personality and, oh my God, she's a lesbian and I like her, or oh, she's a lesbian, I can't stand her, but not because she's a lesbian, you know? I mean, it's just one part of the package. My bigger advice, though, is for young people to get political and to take a stand and not just take for granted the rights that we all work so hard to get. But there are still so many more battles to be fought. You know, during the whole Prop 8 debacle, it was so exciting to be at a rally and see young people politicized again and taking a stand. And we need that younger generation doing it because I'm tired. You know, I did my thing and would appreciate respect for what, I'd like young people to respect what came before them and take the ball and continue to move forward.